So we'll move now to our first invited speaker. We're absolutely delighted to be able to welcome Nicola Marsden, who is a professor of social informatics from Heidelberg University in Germany. So Nicola combines insights from psychology, software engineering, design research, and organizational behavior to improve collaboration and foster innovation in information and communication technology, ICT. So her research is based on a combination of experience in both academia and industry, and it gives a balance then between scientific knowledge and a practical approach. Her most recent academic research examines behavioral design to de-bias collaboration with human-computer interaction and design processes. She's also the Vice Chair of the National Competence Centre for Technology, Diversity and Equal Chances in Germany. It's a non-profit dedicated to ensuring equal opportunity for women and men in STEM education and industry. And it produces research-based resources, develops and coordinates nationwide initiatives, such as the Girls' Day program, which is part of an Action 3, Chances for Girls and Women in STEM, in the German Federal Ministry of Education and Research's STEM Action Plan, which goes up to 2023. And the objective is to encourage girls and young women to choose STEM occupations. So we're absolutely delighted to have you, Nicola, and the title of your talk, Using Living Labs as Research Infrastructures to Promote Gender Equality, the Interface of Tech and Gender. Many thanks, Nicola.
Thank you so much, Gemma. Thank you. I'm absolutely excited to be here. I would like to just have you briefly confirm that you can see my presentation.
I can't at the moment.
You cannot?
Now I can. Yep.
Now you can. Okay, cool. All right. So, yes, I'm very excited to be here in this session on women as tech producers and innovators. I will draw on research that was done in the project called GEWINN, which is actually the German word for like victory. Benefit or gain stands for Gender Knowledge Informatics Network. And we received funding from the German Federal Ministry of Education and Research, the BMBF, in the funding line Success with STEM, New Chances for Women. And the aim of this funding line is to identify and implement ways to help girls and women successfully make the transition into STEM courses and study, and then also enhance career paths for women. And it's also part of Action 3 that you have already mentioned of the BMBF's STEM Action Plan. So the work I'm talking about was done in collaboration with University of Siegen, with Michael Amadi, with my colleague Karen Holzblatt, and my colleagues from the Competence Center, Technology, Diversity, Equal Chances. And I will be talking on using living labs as research infrastructures to promote gender equality. And the way I have structured the presentation is I would have a brief look at the problem of how to ensure gender equality in digitalization, and then put forward one approach that we have tried out to deal with this problem, that's using living labs. And then at the end, look at possible implications for research and gender on gender and digitalization as an impulse for this mutual learning group. All right, so let's start with a brief look at the problem, which you all know very well, and which shows us that it's a long and hard way to get women into the door of tech companies. They've already had a long and hard way behind them by the time they get there. And the focus here is really on the tech companies and what I'm talking about. And now let's look at what happens once they are in the door, is that actually they leave the companies at a much higher rate than men do. And they leave, the numbers that we have for the European Union is that at age 30, only 20% of the women that have a degree in ICT are still working in the field. And at age 45, there's only 9% that are still working in ICT. So this is really worth looking at what is actually happening inside these organizations. What are the mechanisms, the practices inside the larger context of the organization, but we also think it's worthwhile looking at the specific context in the team that actually affects gender equality there. And what we find is that women very much still feel like they're trespassing on a male domain. Marcella has mentioned this in the beginning, and the programmer culture that's holding women back and makes it not an equal playing field is not only part of Silicon Valley, but also very much part of the culture in European tech companies. And at the same time, of course, these tech companies hold extraordinary power over our life, over all the possibilities that we have, and of course about over what comes up next. And so in terms of technology productions, if we're looking at apps, video games, artificial intelligence, algorithms, this is of course problematic because the absence of diverse perspectives contributes to fundamental design flaws. So we have digital tools that don't solve women's problem as good as men's, for example. And also we have a reinforcement of gender structured in society. For example, if we have default female voices in virtual assistants and things like that. So the question that we're dealing with, the problem that we're dealing with is how to best describe, conceptualize, and act upon this problem of integrating gender awareness into digitalization, especially tech producers. And we are looking at it from a methodological perspective today, and that, of course, touches many other things. And we argue that living lab research could be an approach that has many benefits in trying to deal with this problem. What does that mean? So, living lab research represents a user-centric research methodology for finding, for prototyping, for validating, and refining complex solutions in real-life contexts. Okay, and with a participatory process. It started in HCI and application research. It's now actually much used in sustainability research. And now, living lab research is not per se oriented towards gender equality, but we argue that there's important starting points there that we can use, for example, really using diverse experiences and perspectives as a starting point, dealing with a high complex problem in a real life setting, and also trying to unmask taken for granted social practices. So what we have done is we've adapted this approach as a research methodology for integrating gender awareness. Did so by focusing on creating safe spaces also within the organizations, giving a voice to marginalized experiences, and co-producing interventions, so developing new practices within the organizations. The Living Lab approach serves both as an infrastructural as well as a methodological framework. And the way we have kind of split this up is in 4 different spaces or layers, if you will, that we are targeting, that we're working on. So you have like the user space or the participant space. And so this would be the people that you are developing for, that are involved, your stakeholders, your users, the contacts that you're dealing with. And in our case, we had a wide variety of disciplines, and we have people from academia and practitioners, early career people, very experienced people, different fields. So you got informatics, gender researchers, HR, design research, all together creating what we then call like a network of excellence. And the biggest challenge, of course, in this user space is actually if you're looking at the transdisciplinary and the interdisciplinary collaboration that is needed to really work together yeah, for example, if you're looking at gender research and the tech organizations, an agreement, yes, okay, gender equality is important, but you have totally different perspectives that often kind of coexist. Okay, so you have the tech industry trying to raise the number of women and wondering why are they not coming. At the same time, looking like for a culture fit when they're hiring, and very much interested in practical solutions in terms of, okay, what exactly should we do? Where on the other hand, you have gender research very much focused on when there's a lack of diversity. It's not the employees who need fixing, it's the system. So trying to look at how can we fix the institutions, how can we fix the processes at a very high level. So getting these two perspectives together and getting a collaboration going here was at the very heart of our living lab. And we did so by recruiting 6 organizations that we aim to collaborate with over the 3-year course of the of the project, and we started with the research topics that they brought in to work with that. Okay, so that was the first area, the user space. And then if we're looking at the creative space, that kind of describes the stakeholder interactions and how we organize them in this network of excellence. So we offered events, offered resources, organized mutual learning for the different stakeholders, and organized the creative processes both within these organizations that were participating, but also in the whole realm of all the stakeholders. And I'm just here going through some impressions of what we were doing there in the symposia, the collaboration that was going on, working with the organizations, and also getting academia in there. We had a large scientific conference in there too. So that was the creative space, the organization of the interactions. If we're looking at the methodological space, this is very much drawing from participatory action research, organizational development, working in big and small iterations, being empirically informed, making sure you have the right metrics. Of course, Marcella said earlier, indicators are not innocent, looking at what can we actually act upon, put out these actions, and then evaluate them in iterations. So that was the methodological approach. And the fourth space here was the management space, where we're looking at coordinating the different stakeholders and really trying to bridge the different approaches, the different views of the stakeholder groups, translating information, and of course, making sure there's a safety or trust that can be used to really fruitfully exchange. So that's kind of how you can use, or how we use this living lab research as an infrastructure. Maybe let's have a brief look at the what. What exactly were the topics that we put in that came out of this very much bottom-up approach, and that kind of is mirrored in the topics of the symposia that we had. We looked at, for example, agility in software development, organizational cultures, HR processes, algorithmic systems, and how they affect gender, and then the problem of retention. So we took these topics as primers, and they carried into the organizations, they carried into the symposia, and all the activities that we did within the Living Lab. Here's an example of a process inside one of the Living Lab companies. Okay, so you see here, they went through two iterations, and it's very much a bottom-up approach that we're doing here. We work actually with what we found in the organizations and worked with them, tried things out, big and small. So one example maybe of a small thing, but the small thing that's also big, is my colleague Michael Amadi was actually shadowing in one of the organizations when a women developer, and this just really happened when he was coincidentally there, came in and tells her female colleague, okay, are we the only ones making coffee here? Okay, so then they discussed this. They were very upset about this, and they came up with a solution that was very much rooted in the geek culture that they find themselves in, but at the same time it was an interruption of that. And what they did is they created a meme and stuck it on the coffee maker. Okay, so here's the meme that they stuck on there, and later in the afternoon somebody else had made coffee, so this intervention was a success in their book. And of course it's a small thing, but it's all very much related to the topic of office housework, of invisible work, of what's glamour work, and of course in tech that is coding, and what are other things that need to be done. So here are like the critical processes that were identified in the Living Labs organizations. They looked within their organization, how and where are we gendered in this like life course of an employee, if you will, and worked for their organization and with the help of this network of excellence on creating an equal playing field here. There were some issues that we identified as cross-cutting issues in the different Living Lab organizations that we then developed best practices on and provided it for all of them. And then we also developed recommendations for actions. These are kind of like 4-page, very easy to digest with little theory boxes and specific interventions that you can try out, that we distributed widely, and they were very well received. So now I'm coming to the end, and maybe if we're looking at the learnings now, or what we can learn from this regarding policy, or maybe regarding implications for research on gender and digitalization. Of course, the overall recommendation really is it's worthwhile instilling Living Labs as a research infrastructure for gender and tech problems, because we are dealing with very complex problem that needs a real social innovation, and that needs to be implemented within the tech organizations ASAP. So the Living Lab approach can be used as an infrastructure to support this process. And of course, this means to make sure that the research is interdisciplinary, is transdisciplinary, make sure that gender research is applied in real life contexts, make sure to give voices to marginalized groups and have buy-in from the tech companies at the same time. So create a win-win situation there. Make sure to start with what you have and then tweak processes. That is something that we thought was very important. And make sure to use an experimental approach, try things out, go in iterations, and make sure to to innovate in both directions. So from gender research and from what we know about gender and innovation into the tech companies, but also actually back in terms of what do the tech companies have to offer for us in research to actually refine our processes. So hope I've given you some ideas about how to use Living Lab research to conceptualize and to act upon the problem of integrating gender equality into digitalization. So thank you so much for your attention.
That's brilliant, Nicola. It's absolutely fascinating, particularly as you talk about the culture and the critical processes identified in the Living Lab organisations, and be very interested in reading the recommendations for action that you mentioned there. So we have some time for questions. If attendees could either use the chat function if they want to type a message and we can answer it. I think my colleagues will enable you to unmute if you want to raise your hand, if you'd prefer to ask a question directly to Nicola. But I have a couple to start us off, if that's okay. So Nicola, in the companies that you worked with, what did you find was holding back gender equality?
Let me just really say that I think what was holding back was there were very, very well-meaning people with implicit bias, you know. So if you look at what we encountered, it was very much a lack of understanding that an identical situation is not identical for men and women. That this is really something that I think is crucial to think that from the perspective of the organization, while they can come in, they have all the same options, they have all the same situation, resources and everything. What is the deal? But not being aware of just what that does, especially if you're looking at software engineering, at digitalization, these are all team processes that are taking place, right? So the situation is very much influenced by who is in the majority here. So this is actually something where we found a lot of tokenism going on, you know, the one female there being the one who always has to answer for all women. And of course, we all know the reason we like teams is because that allows us to be seen as an individual. You know, but that is exactly what these women don't experience there. They just experience there like the token for all women. And so this is something that we really found is holding back, you know, this idea of, okay, you should really be in charge of this project. I think you'd be great, and you know, and then you have this woman actually thinking, okay, I'm finally being seen, and then comes the reasoning behind it, because you are a woman, and we really need somebody who is able to de-escalate here in this situation, because it could be hard, you know. So just creating awareness of that and showing that this is what is actually holding women back there is very, very important, I think.
Very good. And we have a question come in there on the chat. Do companies think it's a good idea in theory, but maybe not in practice? That they think that there is a diversity hit and not really that it's about gaining an advantage?
I'm not sure I understand the diversity hit, but let me just try and answer, and then please do ask again if I don't answer it. I think the companies very much need to be taken seriously with their problems that they perceive, and I think it's very important to take them as a starting point, because obviously we know so much about it and the companies know so little about it in a way, you know. So really trying to argue from their perspective and really showing the advantage that that they have is something that's extremely important. And of course, with tech companies, that would be the argument. Okay, the what does the lack of diversity cost us, and what could we actually benefit and gain with diversity? So I think starting with that argument is extremely important to kind of get into the door and get their buy-in in this process.
Fair enough. No, that's brilliant. And thank you so much, Nicola. It's a very short exploratory session that we have, but that's been fantastic. So thank you so much. We're delighted that you've been here with us. So
thank you so much.
Brilliant. So we'll move on then next to our next invited speaker. And I'm delighted to say that we have Amy Bohan from Accenture, which is a company known to most of us, delivering on the promise of technology, operating in 200 cities across 50 countries, 514,000 employees worldwide. So Amy is a senior manager in Accenture in Ireland in the technology practice, and she joined in 2007, having completed her PhD in cognitive science in UCD. Prior to that, a research master's in computational linguistics. And then I'm pleased to say she did her BSc computer science in our very own Maynooth University. So Amy has been involved in the development of software projects for client companies, including, including multinational banks, government, and semi-state organizations for the past 14 years. She's a member of Accenture's Future of STEM network that has the goal of innovating and implementing practical ways of inspiring young female students to pursue a career in STEM and to address the gender imbalance and diversity obstacles that exist, particularly in Ireland's technology sector. She's been very active, in participating in university recruitment activities for Accenture over the last 10 years, supporting campaigns with a focus on women in technology, and has also represented Accenture on curriculum advisory boards at universities. There's an Accenture Parental Support Initiative, which is led by Amy, and providing that informal support for new parents prior to and during their return to the workforce. And the program was instigated to increase the number of new mothers returning to work after their first period of maternity leave, but it was diversified under Amy's leadership to include support for all parents. So we're absolutely delighted to have you here with us, Amy, and your talk aiming towards a 50-50 gender balanced workforce in Accenture by 2025.
Thank you so much indeed, Gemma. I'm absolutely delighted to be here. And Monica, I think I'm going to be in a position to answer the question that you just had. So let me start. Hopefully you can see my slides okay.
I can, of course. Yep.
Fantastic. Thank you. I'm conscious that I've only 15 minutes. I have to admit, I really struggle to condense down all our material. So what I'm hoping to be able to do, I'll start by giving you a very brief overview about Accenture. But what I want to focus on is our goal of getting to a 50-50 gender balanced workforce by 2025. So obviously I'll show you where we are now. And the focus of what I'll talk about is actually a significant amount of research that we've conducted ourselves in both the labour market and recruitment, addressing what we know is a gap in the labour market for women in technology, but also the retention of women. So I'm hoping I can follow on from the previous talk to be able to explain certainly what Accenture has done and our recommendations for companies to retain women, all in our goal towards a 50-50 gender balanced workforce. So just very briefly about Accenture. We are a leading global professional services company providing both services and solutions in strategy, consulting, digital, technology, and operations. And we are, in fact, the world's largest independent technology service provider. I've included just a brief overview of the scale. We are a global company. We have significant experience in more than 40 different industries. Currently, our number, I'm not sure if this is 100% correct, but we're in around 492,000 people globally. And we serve clients in actually more than 120 countries. And I've just briefly put in a subset of our services that we provide. I'll also flag that I've included some links on all of my slides here. So this presentation is also served as a source of information for anything that you'd like further, because as I mentioned, I had a lot of information to condense in this short time. So getting to equal, and where are we now? I am absolutely delighted to share these numbers with you. And these are our global numbers. Currently, 49% of our new hires globally are women, and our overall global workforce is 45% women. So we are 5% short of our target. Of that, 43% of those revenue producing roles are held by women. 42% of our board of directors are women, and 30% of our executives, of which 25% of our managing directors are women. So we previously had a goal of 20% of our managing directors as women by 2020, and we have indeed exceeded that and will continue to grow that number. Our Irish figures are actually even closer to our targets. In Ireland, 48% of our total workforce are women. We have 42% women of our managing directors. 42% of our women, of our managing directors are women in Ireland. So we're absolutely thrilled with that number. And in fact, our graduate offers recently have been 52% to women. So Accenture absolutely recognizes the importance of inclusion and diversity. And to answer your question, Monica, we absolutely recognize the value of the diversity for innovation, and that's something I'm going to touch off. And obviously gender equality is part of that inclusion and diversity, but obviously bringing your true self, your ethnicity, LGBT, that's all part of the importance of inclusion and diversity. So what I'm going to cover in the next number of slides, and apologies if I'm flying through it. As I said, I've put in links to all of this, should you wish to look at it at a later stage. I'm firstly going to look at the research that we've conducted and also what we've done ourselves in relation to that labour market gap, which obviously is important to us as a technology company. So we've actually conducted some research in Ireland specifically for the past number of years in relation to what we term girls in STEM. We had 4 reports in the past 7 years, and I'm going to touch off the 2 most recent ones from Girls in STEM and now What Now for STEM. I've also just included some links here then to some other skills gap research that we've conducted in Ireland also. So just very briefly, I won't go through all of this information, but just to give you a background on what we've been looking at, as we are acutely aware, there is a significant gap in the labour market of girls in STEM subjects. And we have conducted research under the guidance of Paula Neary, one of our managing directors, in relation to girls in STEM. And we have published these reports in 2013, 2015, 2017, and 2019. So our 2017 research has shown that some of the influences and barriers that we've previously identified do still exist. Parents and family members are highly influential in subject choices, but they're actually lacking information about the STEM careers. Things like association perceptions, girls are more likely to be influenced by social aspects. Things like language that's used in careers in science technology. Role models is going to come up time and time again, both for girls in colleges and also in industry, and I'll touch on that again. But also things like the information breakdown. Teachers and parents are saying there's not enough information between the skills that young girls need in relation to the skills market for jobs. And unfortunately, while there has been improvement in stereotypes, there are still stereotypes that exist in relation to STEM subjects. So our recommendations from our 2017 paper was probably things that you've hopefully already seen, but are still pervasive. Early intervention, start STEM schooling earlier from a primary school basis. And in fact, we conducted research in America as well, significant research, and I'll touch on that later briefly. But again, it's the same thinking. This is not just in Ireland. It is about introducing STEM thinking from primary school level. The parental ownership is very important, and I think it's a societal effect, reframing the thinking and attitudes to STEM. And we in Accenture believe that that is part of our responsibility within industry. So that collaboration between industry, government, and education, all working together for the entire society to change the perceptions and the language, change the language of STEM and the thinking around it. What Now for STEM then was conducted in 2019. It was built on the previous research, but it's also looked at that it's not just confined to gender in relation to the STEM subjects. What we found was that in Ireland, many of the teachers and the students felt that the subjects themselves were too hard to study. So some of our findings, additional things were, teachers agree that students would study the STEM subjects if they actually knew about the future career. So again, very similar to our previous findings. We looked at, and I've given some of the stats here. Again, I've included the link if you'd like to see. There was quite significant findings in these in terms of students, all students, male and female, believing that the subjects that they choose have a big impact on their final career, and that they're not sure that they're being taught the right subjects to succeed in the workplace. In terms of what we've been teaching hasn't really changed much. The good news is now 1 in 4 parents in 2019 are more informed about STEM career opportunities. So that was 1 in 7 in 2015. So delighted to see that we're going in the right direction. And also that 90% of the students now believe that the work experience help understands career opportunities. So again, that's some of our recommendations. However, the traditional careers still remain the most popular among our students for career choices. So our recommendations, again, very similar to what we found previously. inspiring students through awareness. So what we've added from our previous research is the importance of introducing the work experience, that collaboration between industry, government and education, bringing in transition year students in 4th year in Ireland, bringing that STEM work experience. Also empowering teachers. So our research has really focused on the experience of teachers, their perception, and ensuring that they have the knowledge of STEM and what it entails. And again, focus on more primary and preschool, catching that gender imbalance early. So what we've been doing in Accenture honestly has been very much been done for a long time, and it's absolutely in line with the research that we're finding. So the first is the active support of the STEM activities. So as mentioned at the start, I'm part of a Future of STEM network where we actively participate in a number of STEM initiatives within Ireland. So obviously the research that we've conducted and we publicize are really important. It's about telling that story. It's about getting that out beyond industry to everyone in society. Our collaboration and participation. So I've mentioned some See with 30% Club, STEM Passport Initiative, which has been kicked off in Maynooth University. I Wish and Teen Turn, these wonderful organizations, Girls Who Code, predominantly in America, but again, it's collaboration with industry, bringing it to our young women, and transition your work placements. And then also STEM teacher internships in conjunction with DCU is a 3-month internship where teachers are actually brought into industry to get first-hand experience. And Accenture is one of the companies where we offer those internships, and we partner with DCU. Graduate recruitment is an area that we're very focused on and that I personally have been involved in for a number of years, where again, we have targets for female candidates, and they're not just targets for numbers' sake. We bring our young new recruits and existing employees onto the campus to give a real life view of what a role in STEM, in technology, in our case in Accenture, is like, to help to bridge that information gap that may exist. And one other point of note that I'm delighted that we do is we have what's called our Resume Returners program. This is a 4-month work placement for those people who've, women specifically, who've taken a career break of 2 or more years, where they're feeling lacking of confidence getting back. This Resume Returners program is an internship to help bring them back into the working world. I'm going to move on very quickly then to our research and again what we do in Accenture in relation to retention. So we actually have a lot of research and thought leadership on gender equality. And again, I'm going to focus on one in this talk, but I've included the link to this website where you can get the details and the research itself in all of these areas. So When She Rises, We All Rise was conducted in 2018, and it's where we identified 40 factors that can help drive equality in a company. Following that in 2019, we did a really interesting research, I think, in terms of equality driving innovation. And this is where we understood that actually innovation is a really key factor for growth for companies. And that in fact, industry leaders don't recognize that innovation, the importance of it. But what we found in our research is that equality is a key driver in innovation. So we found things that innovation actually equals economic potential, growth, and finances, which is obviously of interest to companies, but that the innovation mindset is 6 times higher in most equal cultures than in the least equal ones. So this is really significant. Building on that research then in 2020, we published The Hidden Value of Culture Makers. So we really started honing in on the culture of organizations. We know that an equal culture will drive innovation and growth for a company. It's therefore of interest. It's therefore of value to companies to invest in the culture. So what we found in 2020 was that we have what we could call our oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. I'm going on too quickly. Sorry. what we found is our culture makers. There's some companies that have culture makers who are ahead of the curve, who recognize the value of an inclusive, diverse culture and the benefits their organization is getting. And it very much related back to our 2018 research in terms of those 40 factors to help this drive equality. So what I'll talk about now then is our most recent research, which is resetting that tech culture. And it's 5 strategies to help keep women in technology. So we've absolutely recognized the importance of culture, and this is the key piece for companies. So the current landscape when we conducted this research was very much similar to what we've seen for a number of years in relation to colleges, workplaces, and in leadership. What we found from our research from 2018 and beyond is that what makes either a college or a workplace inclusive can be condensed under 3 factors: bold leadership, comprehensive action, and an empowering environment. The outcomes and the recommendations sit within that. And these are very tangible actions that companies can take to support women in technology, and something that Accenture has been doing, obviously, to get us to where we need to be in terms of our gender balanced workforce. So just on those very quickly, the first one is let both parents parent. That parenting should not just be about women, that it is so important that men are involved and have the opportunities and they're lead. Making senior role models a metric. And again, role models comes up time and time again, but making it a metric and goals for these. What we call sending women-specific reinforcements. And we find this again in universities, where we need to be able to give mentorship and sponsorship and support for women in their roles. And then the 2 other ones that we've identified is the link between creativity and innovation. It's something that women are really interested in and focusing on that. So environments which where employees are rewarded for their innovation is really beneficial. And then finally, meeting on their own terms, providing opportunities, say, to network that's not outside the work hours, perhaps at lunch, or what we do in Accenture is breakfast mornings, so that women can attend. I'm delighted then to tell you what we've been doing in Accenture, which is absolutely in line with what our research has found. And I think it's why we're on target for a 50-50 gender balanced workforce. Culture is absolutely first and foremost. And it's the focus on inclusion and diversity. So it's not just about gender equality, it's all of the inclusiveness. Reinforcing the idea that bringing your true self to work. So this naturally falls into the negation of the idea that to progress, women should behave like men. But it's very important for our LGBT colleagues, for ethnicity, that everybody can be themselves, bring their true selves, and that diversity will feed the innovation, and that innovation will feed growth. And we have what in Accenture are truly human, which is something that's focused on the importance of the individual and taking care of your whole self, which is really encouraged, and I'm a huge fan of it. Policies, we have lots of flexible working policies, parental leave, and as Gemma mentioned, our informal parenting supports, our family and carers network, our parenting buddies for returning new parents to help them through that difficult time of maternity and then coming back to the workforce through all areas. And what we're focusing on a lot is for carers as well, not just for new parents. So having the policies, the flexible working, I myself work a 4-day week using parental leave on an extra day, having that flexibility. For me as a working mum, I've had my 3 children during my time in Accenture. That's been really instrumental in my career. Another thing I mentioned that I think is really critical for gender balance is a meritocratic performance. And a number of years ago, Accenture changed to a performance achievement, a strengths-based performance rather than performance management. So again, it's about the strengths and focusing on the positive. Role models and mentorship is absolutely imperative. Accenture CEO is a woman. And as I mentioned before, we have a very high proportion of amazing managing directors in Ireland. Dr. Michelle Cullen is our lead of inclusion and diversity. Paula Neary I've mentioned, Hilary Mara, some amazing women in technology who for me have absolutely been a role model and an inspiration. And we've also have mentorship, again, Women in Technology program, and this is global, where we help fast track the careers, but also at a senior level for managers, senior managers, managing directors. We have a dedicated mentorship program in technology. And the last item I'll mention is just in relation to training. We have compulsory training in unconscious bias, in ethics and compliance, and also in technology. And these are compulsory training, which again is reinforcing the equality culture. I've included this slide because I'm very, very proud to say it's not just about saying, it's about doing. So Accenture is very, very active publicly in inclusion and diversity. The Women on Walls initiative was about putting portraits of women. It's the visibility of women role models. It initiated in the Royal College of Surgeons and it has grown, and that is something that Accenture has sponsored. We're also we hold the largest industry celebration of International Women's Day every year. And I've just included as well some of our networks that we focus on within Accenture, our accent on gender equality, family and carers, LGBT. Enablement is very important as well. Accent on enablement, reasonable accommodations. It's about inclusivity, and ethnicity is very, very important. About people being able to bring their true selves and to be valued as such. So in summary, as I said, I genuinely believe we are absolutely on our way to a 50-50 gendered balanced workforce. We recognize the importance of the industry support and that collaboration to promote more girls and women to make those choices in STEM subjects, which obviously is going to improve the current gender gap. And finally, the importance of a diverse, inclusive culture with key initiatives, not only will improve the gender balance, but the innovation and growth for companies. It's an absolute win-win. Thank you very much for listening.
That's brilliant, Amy, and thank you so much. It's fascinating to hear about all the work. There's so much, like you say, and your company has very impressive numbers, gender balance, that the rest of us are only looking enviously at. And it's very reassuring to hear how much emphasis your company is placing on this, and the research that you've spoken about, and particularly the focus on culture and what makes a college and work inclusive. I know you have limited time, so you may not have time for questions.
No, I have time for questions. That's not a problem.
Oh, perfect. Excellent. Well, if anybody wants to write a question in the chat, please do. We will make the presentation and links available after the session. And I know we're running a little bit over time, but I think it would be good if there's questions there. And I have one in particular, Amy, or actually I see a hand up. So Monica, did you want to ask a question?
Sorry, I don't mean to hog the thing, but thanks very much, Amy. That's very heartening, actually, to look at the statistics. It's really impressive.
Yeah.
I have two questions. One is hopefully easy, shorter than the other. So the first one is, have you found it easier as the numbers increase for this to make it happen? So as the numbers of women increased, it just became more normal and natural to have more diversity. And the second one is kind of in terms of geographical differences. So like we know in Ireland, like I'm in the School of Computing and we have, sort of 15, 16, 17% female intake, but in other parts of the world, it's closer to 50-50. Can you just speak to that piece, just how does that impact things? Is there more women staying on in the other countries where it's 50-50, or just kind of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so in terms of I'm sorry, to your first question, can you remind me again, just in terms of...
just as more women came in, did it easier? Did the diversity piece become easier?
I think the diversity has been there for a long time. I have to be honest with you. As I said, I'm in the company 14 years. I think it was there. But what's improved is the focus. It's not just lip service. It's drilled in. And again, it's not so much necessarily on gender balance. It's about bringing your true self. It's about the importance of diversity in all areas of which gender balance falls. So that culture has been there for a very long time, but it is pushed by the leadership. It's not just spoken about once, it's reinforced time and time again in everything that we do. And we're very public about it, externally and internally. And I think that's very important as well. And, you know, when I go out on campus, it's very easy for me to talk about it. I'm talking about my own experience, which I think resonates. And then in relation to your second question, in relation to the 50-50, so I mean, I suppose our 50-50, the numbers will vary from country to country, but we're looking globally at 50-50, and we are very much a global company. Right now, my project is based offshore. I'm working for an Irish and an American company with a team in India and in the UK. So those numbers, whilst they will fluctuate, obviously we've got a very high proportion of managing directors, female managing directors in Ireland. That drives in all of the countries that we operate in. So whilst overall it's 50-50, you know, and that we're not going to stop, you know, obviously 50-50 is where we want to be, but in terms of the managing directors, we're at 42% in Ireland. In England, I don't have the exact figures in front of me, but we're absolutely growing those and will continue to drive. Again, we want to focus not as well on gender, but also on ethnicity, diversity. It's about having that mix and experience. We just really recognize the value of that.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. Great.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you, Monica. And we have time for one more question there. I think Trina has her hand raised.
Thank you for a very enthusiastic talk. Did you say that there were like 6 times more innovation in companies with diverse workforce or gender equality? Could you say something a bit more about it? How innovative, in which way, and do you have the reference? Because I'm working with gender balance and innovation, so I'm really interested if you have some reference.
Absolutely. So
research.
So that research is in relation to our tech culture. I need to just pull up my slides here on it. So yes, what we found, and what we were looking at was these and again, it was a natural progression from our research in relation to the equality driving innovation. And because again, we've identified that's a key factor for women. We want to innovate. We love that creativity. So that's an important part of STEM. In terms of the metrics, we found the importance of in innovation and growth and how the diversity fosters that. And it's very similar to the previous talk where you're talking about bringing people together with diverse ideas that can formulate and come up with new ideas. It's because people have different experience, and that's why diversity is so important for innovation. And then from a cultural perspective, therefore, it's the diversity of that workforce that can bring those different experiences to ultimately come up with new ideas. And it's something that we've seen very strongly. We have a R&D in Ireland in research in the dock in Ireland, and we've got huge diverse teams there from different experiences, and the innovations off the charts. So yes, our research has shown that diversity of culture is a direct influence of innovation. And I have included the link to our research and thought leadership. I've included the link to that, which within that page then has all of the link to the direct research methodologies and all of the details in relation to those.
Right, hi everybody. We'll get started again. So we're moving into our examples of good practice now. So we're looking for initiatives from member states, and we're delighted to have 2 countries presenting today, Belgium, Brussels, and Spain. So I'm delighted to welcome from Belgium, Brussels, Sophie Lemayeux, who is a European policy advisor in innovators, Brussels, Belgium. Sophie joined innovators in November 2017 as a European policy advisor, where she monitors developments related to EU policy on research and innovation. She also takes part in the realization of the Brussels Region Smart Specialization Strategy. And prior to joining innovators, she worked as a labour market analyst for the Brussels Region Office for Employment. And so Sophie's talk title is the Brussels Region Strategy on Gender and Digitalization, Science Awareness and Gender Mainstreaming. Brilliant. Thank you very much, Sophie.
Okay, so I'm starting to present now.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
So. Okay, I'm opening the presentation. So it takes a bit of time.
No worries. No
Not
worries.
the most. We are 3 people who working in the same apartment. So.
Perfect. I can see that. You're good to go.
Okay. Wait, sorry. So I'm seeing this in very little, so I'm trying to see it in a bigger, and it didn't work last time. Okay, I will try like this. So so I work for the Brussels Institute for Research and Innovation, and I will present what we do on gender and digitalization. Oh, sorry, that was not the. Wait.
That's okay. Take your time.
I don't think it is the right version, but okay, well, we go with this one. Maybe I just changed the title just before the morning, and but we go with the main title, which was Gender and Digitalization. So I will briefly present the mission of Innoviris. Innoviris is the Brussels Region Institute for Research and Innovation. Sorry, I'm sorry, I have problem with Teams and.
That's not a problem. If you like, I can share the presentation if that would help and can move the slides.
Yeah, can you share my presentation? I think it's better because.
Okay. Let me just get that set up now.
Okay, yeah, we go with this one. So I work for the Regional Institute for Research and Innovation, which aims to connect, stimulate, and financially support companies, research organization, and non-profit organization in their research and innovation project. Innoviris also plays a pioneering role in science awareness towards society and launches many initiatives in the field of citizen science. So you can go to the next slide. Oh, wait, I have a control of it actually, so I can.
Perfect.
Okay, it's fine. So gender inclusion in digital, basically what we do. The core element of what we do is related to the gender mainstreaming strategy. So this is the main strategy we have that is global for the whole of Brussels region and is going beyond innovation and research. So the gender mainstreaming strategy, so to give you a bit of context, the Brussels region has adopted the gender mainstreaming ordinance, which defines the way in which the gender dimension must be integrated into the policy lines of the Brussels capital region in order to achieve greater equality between men and women. And Innoviris, as the administration responsible for research and innovation in the Brussels region, is implementing this gender mainstreaming strategy in its research and innovation policy. So you have the gender mainstreaming strategy at the core, and then you have science and tech awareness strategy that we put in place together with another organization which is called Hub Brussels. And then we have also initiative that we put in place. We have the equal employment opportunities in R&D that we try to enforce as giving example as a public administration. We include gender in evaluation of project, the gender dimension, and we try to integrate gender in project topics. So science and tech awareness strategy. Regarding science and tech awareness strategy, we have subsidies and initiatives. So we have STEM projects. Well, we now call it STEAM, but sometimes we keep the past title that is STEM, but now we say STEAM. We have open calls that are open all year, and we have also thematic calls. We have the science vouchers that give schools funding for a specific project on science. We have the I Love Science Festival. And then we have Women in Tech. We have Women Awards in Technology and Science that is now called Women Ambassador for Science. And we have CanSat and other gender inclusive science awareness campaigns. What are the STEM projects? So there are annual calls to which non-profit organizations, universities and companies can subscribe to raise awareness on science and technology. So the thematic calls, they aim to show young people that science is not abstract or complicated, but it's a core element of our daily life. So in 2019, mathematics was the central theme, and in 2020, we organized 2 on food and health. And in the goals for project, a special attention is given to women. To this end, we have a non-binding criterion, including the grant form, which consists of an explicit assessment of how the projects raise awareness of science and technology among youth and women. And the aim is to raise awareness of these dimensions among project promoters. And starting from this year, there will be a systematic monitoring of the gender dimension through the evaluation forms. So this will allow us to carry more structural monitoring on the impact of the project, on how the project can really target girls, young women, because the STEM project, usually they target young people, but they try to be as gender exclusive as possible. So just to give you 2 examples, we had the ULB that did the platform, so the University of Brussels that did the platform Développement Durable. So to give awareness on science through sustainable development, so talking about waste management and energy. And there was the Think It exhibition. So this exhibition was targeting high schools, secondary schools, on how the urban agriculture can be further developed in the future. So to give a concrete example on how AI, for example, and other disciplines from STEAM can help develop sustainable urban agriculture in the future. So on the other initiatives, you have the Brussels Science Ambassador Award, which was called before the Women Award in Science and Technology, which aims to put remarkable female scientists in the spotlight, to inspire young girls about scientific studies and careers. So every year you have a ceremony, you have the scientist that has been elected by a jury of women that is going to undertake and support activities specifically aimed at raising awareness among girls and women. And they often come from the field of the STEAM disciplines. So you also have the Women in Tech initiative that is handled by Hub Brussels, but we are partners in that initiative. So the goal is to unite partners in the Brussels region that are active in the digital field around the common objectives of gender equality, to raise awareness and inform women about the opportunities offered by the new jobs in the digital sectors. So there was a Women Code Festival that is happening every year. It didn't happen last year because of the COVID crisis, but to give incentive to women to learn to code. And this was selected as a best practice from DG Connect by the European Commission as a European best practice. Also, the goal is to stimulate the creation and growth of companies in this field and support female entrepreneurs. Also, the goal is to encourage women entrepreneurs to share their technical and innovative experience. So, the other initiative in the gender mainstreaming strategy, we can talk about our equal opportunity policy, because as a public administration, we have a bit the role to lead by example, and we are actively committed to gender neutral job offers and inclusive communication with staff. And we also give training on the gender dimension to the panel chairs, selection panel chairs for the projects that we are funding on R&D. We are also monitoring the division of women and men in the R&D project teams through an ex-ante and ex-post analysis. And we also, in the past, we had several calls that really include the gender aspect in the topic of the research. And we also include the gender dimension in all projects on science awareness. As I said above before, that we would ask every person submitting a project on science awareness to explain how this will have a gender dimension, how this will impact young girls. So that's for now. And for this year, we will develop a new STEAM strategic action plan that will run for the next 5 years. And the aim is to set concrete objectives for reaching target group such as females, but also young people, and include the question of gender bias in research, because this is something that we think is really important to really include the question of gender bias in research, but we haven't done for now any concrete thing for that, but we think this is something we could develop further. And for the development of this action plan, we will have consultation with regional partners, and a survey will be organized with the Brussels ecosystem that work on science awareness. And so for the contact, if you want more information on that, you can contact me or my colleague Victoria Canilla that works for Hub Brussels and that is an expert on the Women in Tech initiative. So that's all for me. And if you have questions, go ahead.
Brilliant. Absolutely, Sophie, and thank you so much for that. It is really interesting to hear about the work, and particularly, as you mentioned, from a high strategic level, the subsidies that are available and the other initiatives. We'll do a similar approach. If anybody has any questions that they'd like to put in the chat, please do. Or if you'd prefer to ask your questions directly, if you could raise your hand and I'll keep an eye out for that. I have a question first, Sophie. In relation from a member state point of view, what kind of organisations do you cooperate with the most? Do you work across both the public and the private sector, as well as you mentioned the schools?
So what are our main stakeholders in this kind of gender inclusive? Yeah, we work a lot with non-for-profit organizations that work on science awareness. So we give them funding and we also consult them for best practices. We work with universities because there are universities that also want to work on science awareness because they see that there is a gender gap in some disciplines relating to STEAM. So they try to see what are the best way to give an image of science that is more appealing to young people and then in consequence be more gender inclusive.
Very good. And because I think trying to get that overview, the multi-layered approach at a member state level is very important. So it's good to hear your experience. What challenges do you see in implementing a science awareness policy that's trying to tackle these gender inequalities?
So I think there is always this problem of lacking budget, because I think if you want to do an ambitious initiative on that, you need to work from all the aspects, like from high school to universities to women entrepreneurs, and so you need very ambitious programs. And we are struggling to find enough budget to do the super ambitious project that we want. But so far it's going very well because we have super motivated people, and also universities are willing to help. And so we hope that the new strategy that we are building this year will be filling the gaps that we have now, and so that would be the main thing.
Very good. And then you mentioned about what's next in 2021. What aspects of gender inclusion in that action plan would you like to develop further for the future?
I think that what is very new for us and overall is very new is the question of gender bias in research and how to tackle this issue. We have seen in the EU that some innovation agencies are trying to tackle this issue, and we want to use the best practice approach to know how we can develop topics for programs that really get rid of the gender bias and are more inclusive. And also we want, we are building a strategy on artificial intelligence, and we really want to have a gender dimension included, because this is also something where women are a bit left behind in this kind of jobs related to AI. So this will be the two challenges of the next years.
Very good, and that will keep you busy. We're currently developing our artificial intelligence strategy ourselves. So like that, I think this sharing of good practice amongst the member states is invaluable. So thank you very much for that, Sophie. We'll make your presentation and the links available after the session, and obviously your input and feedback will go into that discussion paper. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, Sophie. We're absolutely delighted to have you.
Thank you. You're welcome. Bye.
Brilliant. So we'll move on to our next country case study, which is Spain. And I'm delighted to welcome Belén Santa Cruz Diaz. I hope I'm saying that right. So Belén is a journalist and an economist and works as an advisor in the Cabinet of the Secretary of State of Digitalization and Artificial Intelligence. Belén has been in this role for a year, and since the creation of the Secretary of State, and it's been a very interesting year, so we're looking forward to hearing all about it. She's been working on different technological initiatives to help the fight against COVID-19, specifically involved in COVID tracing apps, and then has also had the opportunity to coordinate the digital agenda for the digitalization of Spain. So that's Digital Spain 2025. And has been working in the parliamentary area on this. Currently, Belén is the communication director in the Cabinet of the Secretary of State and previously worked in Red Electrica in the Sustainability Department and in consultancy working on economic and social studies. So many thanks, Belén. We're delighted to have you here, particularly to talk about your topic on the Spanish digital strategies to close the gender gap. We can't hear you there. Perfect.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm going to share my screen. Please let me know if everything is okay. Maybe full screen.
It's coming up now. Perfect. I can see it.
Okay, so thank you very much for the invitation. It is a pleasure for me to participate in this workshop on gender and digitalization. As you said, I work for the Secretary of State of Digitalization and Artificial Intelligence, and I will talk about the different areas of actions and projects here in Spain in order to close the digital gender gap. As you know, digital transition is a priority for both the European Union and Spain because of the ability of technologies to drive economic growth in the present, but also to create a new, more sustainable, productive and inclusive model. Digitalization is a driver of change, but it can also exclude some parts of population as women. We are talking about the digital gender gaps. That's why last year, Spanish government launched Digital Spain 2025, a plan for the digital transformation of Spain that will boost digital transformation process as a key piece for relaunching economic growth, reducing inequality and increasing productivity. And I think that it is important to say that this plan is completely aligned with the digital agenda for Europe. The plan sets out, sorry, I can change my slide. Well, okay, sorry.
Yep.
The plan sets out 10 strategic axes implemented through 47 specific measures directed to boost sustainable and inclusive economic growth. But the first thing that I would like to highlight is that closing the gender gap or the gender perspective is a cross-cutting element through all these lines of action and measures, from cybersecurity to digital skills or artificial intelligence. And I think that the best proof of the Spanish government commitment to digitalization and to close the digital gap is that we do not only have this roadmap, this strategy, but we do have a lot of investment for digitalization. In practice, Spain is going to allocate 29% of the funds of the Recovery and Resilience Facility of the European Union to digitalization. This is above the 20% set by the European Commission. And furthermore, closing the digital gender gap is one of the policies with specific investments in this plan. And Spain has this priority, as you can see, But we are aware that the digital transformation will not be a success if we do not close digital divides such as the gender gap. We cannot allow digitalization to become an element of greater inequality, because what we have seen in Spain is that the pandemic has accelerated the digitalization process, but the gaps have become more evident than ever. It is true that the COVID-19 pandemic has promoted the use of digital tools in everyday life, and the frequency of internet use, for example, is as common in men as in women. And in fact, the good news is that in Spain, the frequency of use gap, for example, has been significantly reduced with the pandemic, especially in younger population. But however, traditional gender stereotypes are a reality. For example, while the number of teleworking in Spain has reached the European average during this last year, this could be solidifying gender stereotypes, assigning more to women the reconciliation of family and work responsibilities through telework. But this is not temporary, it's a historical gap that we have not closed yet, and we have to close it. Spain already counts on more women researchers compared to the European Union, 38% compared to 33%. However, only 30% of STEM students are women in Spain. And according to the Digital Economy and Society Index of the European Commission, Spain is below the European Union average in technological specialists, only 3% compared to 4% in the European Union. And the number of women specialists in technologies such as artificial intelligence is stagnant at only 1% of total female employment. Another interesting and negative trend, for example, is that in Spain, only 20% of senior executive positions in large companies, in large technological companies, are held by women, or only 17% of startups have been founded by women. So we know that we have and we can change this situation, and that it will have very positive effects for our country, not only for our society, but also for our economy. For example, we know that closing the gender gap could increase the Spanish GDP by around 18%. So in this context, we have presented different digitalization plans, including specific measures aimed to close the digital gender divide. First of all, we need to rethink the education system from early childhood education, integrating gender considerations on encouraging STEM vocations, which will lead us to reduce the gender gap. The National Plan for Digital Skills provides us with a strategic framework aligned with the 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals. It offers a roadmap, a bridge towards a fairer and sustainable world, and recognizes the need to acquire, develop, and use digital skills to achieve gender equality and empower our women and girls. This plan has among its goals the reduction of the digital gender divide through different tools. For example, a program for the promotion of scientific technological vocation in the educational system, or a program for the promotion of women digital training and participation in technological training itineraries. All of these programs include concrete actions, for example, teacher training to eliminate gender bias, professional guidance that promotes the detection of scientific technological vocations, mentoring program for the development of female role models in the scientific and technological fields, or visibility of digital professional women. No? So in particular, we have a program called Spain Talent Hub program that will also be launched to attract talent both in academic and professional area, paying special attention to foreign investments to develop feminine talent and entrepreneurship in our country. And I would like to highlight that we have set a specific goal in this plan, that is that 80% of the population have basic digital skills, and at least half are women. It is important to say that this is also one of the cardinal points of the Digital Compass proposed by the Commission for Europe's Digital Decade. And another area that I would like to, sorry, I can change my, okay, sorry. 1 second, here. My slides are moving, sorry. So another area that we are working here from Spain is the digitalization plan for enterprises. to impulse the female digital entrepreneurship, basically. Specifically, we have 8 programs and specific lines of funding for startups and digital projects led by women. And we also include support measures for training of female executives and professionals in the digital management of the companies. The goal is to have female experts in digital transformation through digital training for managers and employees as an engine for the digital process of our companies. And we also include upskilling and reskilling programs in the labor market with a special focus on women. In another area, and one of our main strategies here in Spain is the national strategy of artificial intelligence. From the Spanish government, we want to lead the development of artificial intelligence and to integrate this technology into the economy and the society. But the most important is that we want this technology to have a humanist perspective, which means to close the gender gap also in this technology. Specifically, with this strategy, we seek to promote women specialists in artificial intelligence because we think that technology is a reflection of our society. And if we have an unequal society, for example, where algorithms are designed only by men, what may happen, even unconscious, is that we will have a biased artificial intelligence application. For that reason, it is a priority for us to have female specialists, for example, software developers for designing algorithms. And we are promoting also one specific measure that is related to the ethical and regulatory framework, one of the lines of this strategy, that is our Charter of Digital Rights, because we are promoting measures to make sure that algorithms and the different technologies and the digital reality in general do not discriminate. So this Charter of Digital Rights is a reference framework to make sure that our rights are also respected in the digital world. This charter is placing Spain in a leading position in the debate on the technological humanism. And in practice, we anticipate and include in this charter new rights, such as those related to artificial intelligence on the basis of the gender. For example, the right to not be discriminated by an algorithm for gender issues. We know that this is a big challenge, but we have the opportunity to now to close the digital gender gap and to work together so that these opportunities are equally distributed. A digital transformation that also implies a more complex and diverse society, and a transformation that it is not possible and cannot afford to give up half of its talent, because talent has no gender. We know that closing digital gender gap is necessary and demanded by our society, and that it will also have very positive effects. So just let me convey with a message of confidence to all women to make ourselves visible, to empower ourselves, and to be the leaders of the future. Thank you very much, and I will be happy to reply to all your questions.
Thank you so much, Belén. That's fantastic. It's great to hear about the commitment of the Spanish government and the details of Spain's Digital 2025 agenda. It's interesting that in Spain, you've included gender equality as a cross-cutting objective, and in particular for the small and medium-sized enterprises. That's definitely an area that not all countries have gone into at this point. So it's really interesting to hear about that digitalization plan for SMEs. And I also noted your recognition that closing the gender gap would increase GDP for Spain. And I think that's a really important hook as well. And I like your talent has no gender. So we have some time for questions. If anybody would like to write their questions, they can put them in the chat. Both Belén and I can see them. And also, if you would prefer to ask a question yourself, please raise your hand and I will call on you. So I have a couple of questions to start, if that's okay. So in terms of the disruptive technologies, such as artificial intelligence, what do you think is the key to ensuring that this technology does not generate the gender biases?
Okay, thank you very much for your question. So I think that the most important is to make sure that and to know that technology is made by people. We design technology and we are designing the new digital reality. So each of us with our talent, our effort and our ideas are the ones to build the digital worlds in we want to live. But that is why it is so important that this world is designed by both men and women. We cannot allow digital transformation to be a male-only issue. Women must participate in this process on equal terms. So in the case of artificial intelligence, for example, we are already seeing how gender-biased algorithms that guide the operation of this type in a certain direction. This is because they have been designed primarily by men who have developed technologies with only their perspective in mind, but even unconscious. So we have a bias in our algorithms. So that is why it is so important for women to start getting involved as active agents in this type of technologies as soon as possible, because we have a lot at stake.
Absolutely. And like you say, our other speakers have talked about how we can get women in, but also keep women into this discussion and conversation as well. May I ask, what is the entrepreneurial ecosystem like in Spain? What number of female entrepreneurs do you have? And is there a big gender gap compared to other countries?
Yeah, so this is a field where we have to improve a lot. There is a very important gender gap because we only have like 17% of startups founded by women. And we know that in Spain we have great young entrepreneurial talent, particularly among women. But the problem is still the same, that is the lack of opportunities and also the lack of visibility for the women, because there is a data that is very interesting that in Spain, innovative digital projects led by women have a much lower failure rate than those led by men. So we know that we have a lot of talent around our women, but maybe we have a problem of visibility, of confidence, and also of opportunities led to women. So that's why from the Spanish government we are launching specific aids and lines of funding, to help these startups led by women and to work together to impulse all kind of projects and ideas by women.
Very good. Yeah, and that's interesting. You say that companies startups led by women fail less than those led by men. There's a lot of learnings, I think, from different approaches. And I like your point about confidence. I always say it's confidence in the organization or to recognize talent, rather than a lack of confidence in ourselves. We don't need to fix the women. We're fine. It's the organizations, and our previous speaker, Amy, talked about the importance of a company being so visible in all of the initiatives that they're doing to show that they're tackling their own biases. Do you think that that's a big reason why women are not studying STEM careers? Or is there anything else in Spain that you've looked at as to why even getting young women into STEM is such a problem?
Yeah, that's a very big problem, and we are focusing very much in this gap, because it is fundamentally a problem of vocations and reference. Girls and teenagers who are studying in high school right now and need to find role models that get them excited about the world of technology and that invite them to think that they too can be part of it. Such role models exist. We have many examples of successfully young women in the world of science and technology, but what is missing is visibility and confidence of the girls, because they see the world and they see a lot of specialists in artificial intelligence or cybersecurity, but the most of them are men. So it is very important to work together, and if we have a very specialist women in artificial intelligence, to make her visible, to trust her, to generate this confidence for young generations.
Great. And then I've two more questions. I'm taken over on the questions, but I don't see any other hands or comments, so I'm going to keep going with mine, but feel free to jump in, anybody else. You have been working very much or starting to with the COVID-19. And I just wondered, because obviously the pandemic has brought about so much change, particularly in teleworking, and this kind of ability to reconcile family and work-life balance for a lot of people. Have you picked up a sense from companies that they're seeing this as a longer-term change or an option? Or what other elements of COVID do you think are very important from a gender point of view?
Yeah, sure. I think that the pandemic has accelerated in a way that no one expected many processes that were already underway and today are already a reality that we have all integrated into our daily lives. I think one of the greatest benefits of teleworking for everyone, both men and women, is flexibility in terms of work-life balance. But the problems is that what we have seen here in Spain is most of responsibilities have been taken by women. So with teleworking, are women who are taking the worst part of this new reality. So we have to make sure that we have a balance in terms of work-life balance and between men and women. And if in a family, for example, a man and a woman are taking care of the children, it is completely necessary that the care of the children is equally distributed between them, because this is not a reality here in Spain with telework. So it's very important to close this gap.
Absolutely. And like you say, that was advice given to me when I was starting out in my career. Pick a partner that values your career as much as their own, and then you have that partnership. So like you said, there's a lot of social elements involved in it, but a lot of potential. I have a question that's come in via email, and I can put it as the last one, if that's okay. This work that you've been doing at the national level, is there anything that you would say to other member states who would like to do the same? Is there any learnings, anything you could tell us to avoid?
Yeah, sure. I think all countries are working in the same direction, and it's very important the Digital Europe's decade, where we have the same target, not to get 80%, for example, of population with basic digital skills, and at least 50% must be women. I think we are all working in the same direction, but I will say that it is very important to organize this kind of workshop, to work together, to share our different projects, because I'm sure that we all are doing the same. We are working in the same direction. So the important is to close together, to empower ourselves, all the women working in the same direction, and maybe we can to develop a project between different member states for I don't know, maybe impulse vocational STEM studies between our young and younger population. And I'm sure we can do it all together, because I think the objective and the goal is the same.
Absolutely. And I think that shared learning, like you say, is where we move at a faster pace, but it also helps to convince people in our own country that this is a good thing to do when you can see it in another country on a multi-level approach. So what I might do there, Belen, is to thank you so much for joining us today. We greatly appreciate you taking the time. I know everybody is very busy, but it was really interesting to hear your country's experience. We just have a question that has come in there, if that's okay. I might just ask it. Is there a capacity for this at EU level? Which speaks a little bit to the point you were saying.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure we have the capacity, the capability, and we have the funds to do it. So we have the resilience and recovery mechanism, and I'm sure that all countries are going to allocate a lot of investments for this goal. So we have the capability for sure.
Yeah, and that was my correction as well. So I think I said capacity, but also the capability. So do we have enough gender experts, digitalization people that can speak across the different languages of technology as well? So apologies for that. Mm-hmm. Good question on capability, and how do we facilitate it?
Yeah, I think that the main resource of digital transformation right now is our talent. And I think the European Union has a lot of talent. What is important is just to facilitate it, how you say, no? To offer all the opportunities, not to put more barriers to women and the talent to innovate, to design new digital projects based on disruptive technologies such as artificial intelligence. I think we have the capacity, we have the talent, but we have to be to make sure that we have to be open-minded and to open new questions, new dialogues about specific questions such algorithms and how can discriminate us in the new digital reality. Sometimes it is very difficult to start this kind of debates because they have very different ethical, cultural, and social implications. And it is very important not to be afraid of that. It is very important to normalize this kind of debates, to facilitate the transition to a new digital reality based on equality.
That's right, and it actually speaks to our next section as well, looking at how we can get that intersectionality and diversity into the conversation, because I think, as we've seen here today with our excellent speakers, people put forward by the member states, but a lack of men at the table in the conversation as well. So it could also be the capability to bring everybody up to speed on this topic. I think when you have a lived experience, you're already there knowing what's going on. But often I think bringing men into the conversation is often one of the challenges, and particularly giving them the confidence and the language to engage, because often people stay silent when they're worried about offending people. But what we need is everybody to come into this conversation and progress it. So thank you very much, Belen. I know that we're coming to the end of our session, so thank you again for taking the time to join us, and we'll make your presentation available afterwards, and the session is recorded as well. So thank you very much.